Carmel, I met Carmel, I would say, about 6 weeks ago. And she absolutely bowled me over with her story and the story of the project that she is about to launch here in the coming days. So, ladies and gents, please put your hands together for Carmel O'Keefe.
Thank you very much, Edon, for having me here tonight in such esteemed company, and the wall of merit earlier with the other Smarter Egg speakers. I've divided up my talk, actually on Edon's advice, into 3 parts. So I'll just preface the first part with just to give you a little taster of what Dress for Success is all about. Dress for Success is an international, very successful non-profit making organisation, and we promote the economic independence of the lower income women. We activate them back to employment by offering several free programs. So that's just a taster. And my background coming up to it then is the essence of my story tonight. In this day of, or in the last few years, our lexicon is splashed and spattered very liberally with acronyms. And in Ireland, we've got NAMA, NTMA, PAC. The latest one is PIP, the Insolvency Professionals. I've added my one, and it's PIQD. So it's people in quiet despair. And I lead into that one with 4 years ago, about 4 or 5 years ago, in one of my careers at the time. I was visiting a potential client in my career as an interior designer, way out in the country, and I would get lost on a roundabout, so I quite frequently got lost going to visit country-based clients. I did know the area generally, saw a house I recognised. I had done work there maybe 4 or 5 years before that. Rocked up to the door without even thinking, knocked on the door, very wet November night, and we'll call the lady Mary. She came to the door and her face fell when she saw me at the door. And I knew I hadn't done the right thing for whatever reason. So I said, look, I'm looking for Josephine, whatever. Can you just tell me how to get to her? I know she's in the area. So Mary said, I don't quite know, I'll get my husband out. Husband came out, and he saw me, but a very affable man, and he said, come on in, Carmel, it's wet, I'll tell you how to get there. Very large house, we're talking 5,000-6,000 square feet of housing. Very large hall. I had done all of that house 4 or 5 years previously with, I think, a very, very high budget. There wasn't one piece of furniture in the hall. There were doors open to some of the rooms, no furniture. Very few lights on. The house was absolutely freezing. And I was brought into the kitchen where there was a standalone heater plugged into the wall and a television going. So John said, I said, I'm so sorry to have come into you. I've obviously come at the wrong time. John said, no, not at all. He said, here are the directions, da-da-da-da-da. And Mary said, go on, tell her, you know, she did a great job in the house. What had happened was their company had gone into receivership, maybe 8 months, they had their own business before that. And they had been forced, because they were self-employed, to sell most of the furniture to recoup some money. They had 3 small children. Outside the door, nobody knew that this had happened, because we all saw Mary in her gorgeous clothes, 1 BMW, 1 Jeep. I didn't realise at the time, only one of them was taxed to drive on the road. So nobody saw it, and they didn't want to leave the side down. That will link into Dress for Success with me in a moment. My own background is, I grew up in a very privileged home. I went to private secondary school, went on to university, did 2 degrees, worked in, as they call it nowadays, in talent acquisition. It was HR in my day, but it was it's talent acquisition now, I think. Worked at another career as well. I went to university after having gone into talent acquisition first. Then I made one of the very many, I'm sure, not mistakes, but maybe not the best decision in my life. I got married too young. I had a side of me, a creative side of me that needed to be satisfied, and I began to study by correspondence, now we'd call it online, interior design course with a very reputable company in England, Rodeck International. And my poor long-suffering friends all had to suffer me changing the paint colours in their house for practicing. Yes, they did, and they were very kind to me. Along with that, I decided, oh, that's not enough, and I'm not going back out to teach at secondary level. I'll do a Montessori diploma. So I chose to do that online, but I did weekend visits to Dublin. And in between, I had 2 children. So I move along in my life, and everything is going fine. And about 20 years ago, I met the man who was to become my second husband, not across a crowded room, but actually across a very busy shop floor when I was ordering some carpets for a client. He was the owner of the business, I was the interior designer, and the rest, as they say, is history. Yes. So started the rise of, so the point I'm making about why I'm telling you all of this is, I'll bring it into the word success in Dress for Success. So these were my modest successes. I'm not the CEO of a major corporation or anything, but I've had modest successes in my life. So in tandem, both our careers went on the upward trajectory. Eddie's business went really, we did very well, and as did mine, because of course we were in those years called the Celtic Tiger. Was roaring down the road at us. Everybody wanted an interior designer, and if one person in the park had 14 towels in their bathroom, then the other person up the park wanted another 14 towels in the bathroom. So I benefited in as, because integrity would be my thing, in as good a way as possible to do everyone's projects. 2007, 2008 came, and that Celtic Tiger stopped roaring, and we were hit, of course, first because we were allied to construction. So 2 developers walked off into not the midnight sun, the Australian sun, and left us high and dry, owing us very large sum of money. For any business, totally unsustainable to work without it. For ours, really very difficult. So all is never as it seems will apply to my couple I met back 4 years before that, and all wasn't as it seemed either with us. Keeping the outward look, always looking well, doing the best you could to show everyone that things were going great. But no, they weren't. The bank was closing in, we couldn't pay our creditors. And in those days, credit terms were daft in Ireland. You didn't have a 30-day invoice, you didn't have a 60-day invoice, you had a 90-day invoice. So you could stretch out your credit terms ridiculously long. But the creditors needed to be paid, the banks needed to get their money, and at the same time, it's too complicated to explain here, but we as the business were paying a partnership rental on the building we were in. And they wanted to increase it. I think it was 30-odd%. And those days, that's what was being asked. November 2009, the summer of 2009, I had to get into my car. And take note, I really loved my cars. So it was a black Audi, cream leather interior, walnut dash, all the bells and whistles. I was probably wearing designer clothes with designer shoes and creme de la mer cream on my face. You're talking top dollar stuff here now. I was working very hard. I had no time to play hard, so I would have bought myself nice things. So I got into the car and I went to all our creditors and personally spoke to them and struck a deal so that we could come to new terms to pay them. And all but one accepted those. November 2009, and I was getting along with all of that, managing the business. Eddie just couldn't do it. It was his whole life, and he found it very difficult to either downsize or even discuss any of that. November 2009, I was the subject of, and I must really sometime decide whether this was a one-off. Myself and a member of staff were on the shop floor on a November morning, and one of the stakeholders in the partnership, the rental partnership, came through the door with a security company in high-vis jackets. The doors were barred from the inside of the premises, very large premises, and I and the member of staff, we were not allowed out. I could only use the loo with a guard on the door. Now this is 2009 in Ireland. I reckoned they'd been watching too much television or something. So yeah. So, and Eddie at the time was out on a big contract that we were involved in. So I had to telephone him, not using Doreen's mobile phone, actually using a much better one, and I got him. And he had to come from where he was. We were given 48 hours to clear 10,000 square feet of stock off the floors, and probably another 5,000 of store with everything in that. But I masterminded that move, and within 48 hours we were set up in another premises, ready to rock and roll for our first customer to come through the door. That was with the help of all our really good friends. That was November 2009, and it was a very rocky time from 2009 onwards. The shop was not in a great location. It was very difficult. In May 2011, take note, my second husband died. Went to bed on a Saturday night and didn't wake up. So I was now left with a business, no husband, a huge house. We lived in a huge house. My car, really nice car. But on the day after he died, the banks closed down all access to money, which they do when you're employed in a business, or self-employed rather, particularly when you die suddenly. So I had no access to money, but I had all my friends, and they were really good to me. So from the 12 months after Eddie dying to his first anniversary, I had to close the business, wind it down, move everything out of that shop floor to storage, again doing it mostly myself. And then I went into meltdown. I really lost all focus. I don't know that I didn't have a nervous breakdown, but I certainly lost all focus. And coming up to Eddie's anniversary, I thought, this is ridiculous. I'm the one who makes lists about lists. I tick off lists about ticked off lists. But I just couldn't get my act together at all. And of course, prior to Eddie dying, I had invested a lot of my money in the business. Was it stupid? No, it wasn't, because it was our business, it was our life together, and I'd have done anything to hold it together. So just after his anniversary, a friend of mine, Siobhan, who is coordinator with Cork Innovates, she rang me, and she obviously had known what I was going through, and asked me, had I heard of Dress for Success? I had. Would I like to bring it to Cork? I said, absolutely not. It doesn't pay. It's voluntary. I need to earn money. I'm now on a widow's pension. So she said, well, look, just give it a shot. So I researched it. The whole thing resonated with my value system. I applied. I pressed that button, send for my application. It was a 3-leveled application process. I had to have the final one in at the end of October, 60-page business plan. But in between, my very good friend, the auctioneer, she rang me one day and she said, you can't stay there any longer in that big house. You can't afford it. It's too lonely. Will you do a 2-year corporate lease? I said, I'll try. I did. They came. My lovely tenants loved it. And then they told me after saying yes that they wanted it empty. So I had to empty 53 lamps, 28 lamp tables, 4 sofas, a whole load of stuff, 40 boxes of books, into storage. I had no house to go to because I couldn't find an unfurnished house in Cork. So I took a temporary house for 6 weeks in Myrtleville by the sea, and while I was watching the sea every day at the window where the table was, I wrote my business plan. I moved from Myrtleville to where I now live on the 1st of November. The plan went in on the 28th of October. And on the 4th of February, which is actually my birthday, I had a phone call. And with all respect, AJ, to your gorgeous American accent, but I just loved the way the phone call came through on a very wet, cold February afternoon. My phone rang with a very long number, and I went, it's not England, it's a bit too long for that. So I heard, hey Carmel, it's Lexi from the Worldwide Office in New York, because the Worldwide Office of Dress for Success is in New York. And she said, can you take a conference call? And conference call was part of the interview process before you'd get the affiliate, be approved for the affiliate. So I went on conference call, the CEO and another vice president spoke with me, and Joy said to me, she said, it gives us great pleasure to say that we loved your spectacular business plan, and would you like to take the affiliate for Cork? And I went, yes! Not sure I'm saying that in the last week, but I was so delighted and thrilled because 4 months was a very short time to be approved. 1 month later, I was legal to get up and running, and from then until now, September, I had to find a free building because everything is on so, and now I'll tell you about Dress for Success, but everything is on a voluntary basis. So we're voluntary led and voluntary based. So the Dress for Success organisation in Cork, worldwide, yes, it's in 131 affiliates throughout the world in 15 countries. But in Cork, what I hope to do for Cork people, or for Cork women, we are only operating for women mostly. I will roll out a men's programme at the end of 2014 in Cork, because I just think it's as much needed as the women's programme. But for the women in Cork, what my vision for Dress for Success in Cork is that we will build the confidence of women who haven't been to work for a long time and now need to re-enter the workforce due to the current economic situation or just wanting to go back to work. When you're younger, you have that level of confidence that's just not there when you're older. If you haven't been to work at all, it's a scary thing going into work. I didn't mention that for the 6 weeks from the 1st of November to the Christmas of 2012, I was offered an opportunity to work in one of our major stores here in Cork, in selling a very nice product, Joe Malone. And that was another leveler for me, but also a great learning experience. I had to go in and work with a couple of hundred hormonal women coming up to Christmas with really difficult targets to achieve with their sales. They are wonderful, absolutely wonderful, but it's tough work in there, really tough work. So that was another learning curve for me. So what I bring to the Dress for Success Cork affiliate are all the E's. I've got the experience and the empirical evidence, which gives me the empathy. I've got energy and enthusiasm. I've got compassion and passion, because you can do all the number crunching in the world, and if you haven't passion to run your own business, I don't think it just works. We run it by offering several free programs: the confidence building program, the CV writing, CV review, mock interview training, and the core part of our programming is interview suiting. So our clients, for free, get their interview clothes to keep, and they have a styling session with our stylists, professional stylists. They have coaching and mentoring with our professional coaches and mentors who are giving their time for free because they want to give back, like I do. I want to give back to Cork and the business community. I earned my living for over 20 years from people in Cork, so I'm giving back to them. We also will run a professional women's programme, so when the women are successful at their interview, they come back to us for employment suiting, and we bring them on a programme called Job Retention Skills Training. They will learn how to retain that job and develop a career. It's not just for a job. I'm also rolling out a health and wellness programme, because there's no good going to work if you're not healthy. And the other one that I found fascinating when I was getting around to getting my focus back, there's very little information available to the unemployed, self-employed. It's a whole area that's not serviced enough, and I intend to do that in Dress for Success Cork. We will open, well, we're unofficially opened at the moment, in 131 Oliver Plunkett Street on the 2nd and 3rd floors. I have the most amazing team of coaches, mentors, and volunteers. And our volunteers in Dress for Success are always valued, and we value them. And I'll finish by saying there really is never any time for us to wait for the storms to pass. We do have to learn to dance in the rain. We may not all have caused the downfall in our economic globally, not mind locally, but you know, we're in it together. So Gurv Mahagwiv, August Araigling Lekela.